This is CBC Here and Now.
Well, she's been the queen all my life. This is going to be very strange.
Yeah.
You know, she's very kind and courteous.
You know, always beautifully dressed, and she was a queen until the end.
On the throne for more than 70 years, the only monarch many have ever known, remembering Queen Elizabeth II.
It was a humbling experience to be in a department watching expert people in action.
Acting to help injured come-by-chance workers, tonight we take you behind the scenes to the rescue effort at Clarenville Hospital. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. It's the story that's making headlines right around the world tonight. At the age of 96, Queen Elizabeth, Canada's head of state and the longest reigning British monarch, has died. She died today at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. Her eldest son is now King Charles III. Crowds have gathered in front of Buckingham Palace for this historic moment. Family members rushed to be with the Queen earlier today. The official announcement was posted in front of Buckingham Palace, stating that the Queen died peacefully. The flag over the palace lowered to half-mast. Well, shortly after the Queen Elizabeth's death, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau delivered a statement saying Canadians are grateful for her decades of service to the country.
As her 12th Canadian Prime Minister, I'm having trouble believing that my last sit-down with her was my last. I will so miss those chats. She was thoughtful, wise, curious, helpful, funny, and so much more. In a complicated world, her steady grace and resolve brought comfort and strength to us all. Canada is in mourning. She was one of my favorite people in the world, and I will miss her so.
What's your reaction to the passing of Queen Elizabeth II today?
Terribly sad. Feel like crying. I wasn't sure what we should do. We think we'll go and toast her to the Queen.
Very saddened, very saddened. I believe she was a very fine, great woman, and she did a lot, of course, for the Commonwealth.
I just think it's really sad. Just like a big light just went out. I really liked her.
Well, she's been the queen all my life. This is going to be very strange.
Yeah.
We'll have to learn a whole new song.
God save the king.
Yeah, she was always like such a, always beautifully dressed, and she was a queen until the end, right? So, yeah, I think it's sad. I don't know what the future of the monarchy is, but yeah, it's a sad day.
What do you think the future holds for the monarchy now that she isn't there?
Well, I think things are going to be fine. Her Majesty and family, I believe, have taught the younger generations the value of life and everything associated with it. And again, despite any faults one might think with the monarchy, it is still the greatest in the world.
What do you think we lose with her death today?
Oh, end of a big era, big long era. I don't know, a lot, I think. I hope they have a good succession planned. I'm sure they do. I don't know, it's just very sad.
I can't imagine anybody stepping into those shoes. She did an amazing job. Not that I'm a monarchist or anything, but for an impossible job, she did an amazing job. So
I don't know if we'll have anyone to replace her like that. To have someone who was in her position for that long. I don't know if there will be another one like that.
She stood strong amidst all of the turmoil, wars, and through many things, she stood strong, and it'd be nice if we could emulate some of that even in our own lives.
Well, some thoughts there from the streets of St. John's this evening. So let's bring in Garrett Barry now. Garrett, you've been speaking today with some people who've met the Queen as well as her son, the new king. How are they remembering her tonight?
As someone, Carolyn, who despite her position in the world was able to make a personal connection with people, perhaps surprisingly, some of the people I spoke with today described the Queen as funny, likable, someone who would even remember a face if they had spoken to them before. John Perlin was the Canadian secretary to the Queen for 2 years in the 1990s. He met the Queen several times as a result of that function. He calls her the most famous person in the world, but despite that, someone who was able to connect one-on-one.
She had invited me for dinner, to a state dinner on board the Royal Yacht for the President of Iceland. And that night, when the President came on board, the Queen ignored everybody else and took me over to say, this is my Canadian secretary, whom I, accompanied here to take me to Canada tomorrow. So, she's very kind and courteous like that.
In certain parts of our province, affection for the royal family runs deep. Like here in the Inn of Old, Linda Hennebury is the owner. You may recall back in May, during the royal visit, she met with Prince Charles, now King Charles III. She even presented him with a portrait, sharing an old picture of his mother. She also gave him some advice.
And he said, it's quite lovely. She was quite young then. So during the conversation, the second time, I wished him good luck, and I said to him, don't you forget she's your mother. And I said, you love her to pieces, and don't you forget that. And he reached over and grabbed my hand again and squeezed my hand. You could see the print of his fingers in the palm of my hand. It meant that he's human, and he has a heart too. And you could see that when I spoke to him, his face changed when I spoke of that he was his mother.
Now, Perlin also acknowledged that the Queen and the royal family are complicated figures, political figures, and in a time when countries are cutting ties with the monarchy and the Commonwealth, he believes it will be up to Elizabeth's successor, King Charles III, to keep the monarchy relevant to the new generation and to reckon with the monarchy's history. Carolyn?
Thanks so much, Garrett. And we'll have more coverage on the death of Queen Elizabeth throughout the show, including a look back at her historic reign, as well as a message from Lieutenant Governor Judy Foote.
Well, looks like I'm back again for another night, and this map is also back, and you may be like, Jeremy, you showed us this last night. No, it's a different map. same frost advisory, but a different map. So basically, it's a little bit of a smaller section that you'll see here today, but there's also a risk of frost basically for all of eastern Newfoundland. So you can keep an eye on that. Now, we talked a little bit about Hurricane Earl last night, and so we're just going to take a quick look. We'll talk about this more later on in the show near the end, but Environment Canada has released a tropical cyclone statement. So it's not a warning, but basically there could be some activity come from this as it tracks up towards it's a couple hundred miles off of Bermuda right now, but it's making its way up towards us. As you can see, the track, we looked at this last night. So what it's going to be is when it starts to hit here around Saturday into Sunday, our friends at Environment Canada say it could be downgraded to a tropical storm, but it could cause some rain and some wind on the island. But we're going to talk all about that, all that and more coming up later on in the show. Carolyn?
Thanks, Jeremy. Well, it's been 6 days since a flash fire at the Come By Chance Refinery sent 8 people to hospital. Experts say the incident would have overwhelmed even the biggest ER in the country. For those working at the Clarenville Hospital, the adrenaline is only now starting to subside. Here Now's Ryan Cook brings us this inside look at the rescue efforts.
A lot happened between initial reports of an explosion at the refinery at 4 o'clock and victims being transported to St. John's around 10 o'clock. Those 6 vital hours in between are a story of teamwork on an unprecedented scale at the Dr. G.B. Cross Memorial Hospital in Clarenville.
I think the multiple teams and our staff are proud of what they accomplished during this event, and I think they have reason to be proud as well.
Moments after the blast happened, the hospital launched into a code orange.
code orange, I guess, is activated to help our facility to safely and effectively deal with an external disaster to the facility.
And with that, people began flooding to work.
We had staff that were reporting to work that weren't supposed to report to work, that we had staff staying from the day shift, staff that came in early for their night shift.
The first ambulances arrived at the emergency room here at 5 p.m. Over the next hour, 8 people would arrive in total, which is fortunate since the ER only has 8 beds. Several of those people needed to be intubated and ventilated, and the work was done swiftly with cooperation from doctors, nurses, cleaning staff, everyone.
From my perspective, it was a humbling experience. It was a humbling experience to be in a department watching expert people in action.
And then came the helicopters. 5 patients were stable enough to fly, but the Clarenville Hospital does not have a suitable helipad. The RCMP was brought in to close Manitoba Drive, one of the busiest streets in town, and clear space on the Sobeys parking lot next door.
Crucial to the success of this event was the ability to medevac patients out by helicopters. We had a no questions asked response via our HEM system in the province.
Those helicopters made their way to the Health Sciences Centre, where staff shuffled ICU patients across town to St. Clair's to make space. The patients were met by a huge response from paramedics, doctors, and nurses who, like their peers in Clarenville, were ready for anything. A seamless coordination of teams, handing patients with severe injuries from one set of capable hands to the next and the next and the next. This scene, proof of the importance of rural hospitals at a time of emergency room closures.
This is an event which brings to your mind how important it is to have rural care facilities open and available to care for you. When you need it, the system will spare no resources whatsoever to give you the care that you require.
Ryan Cook, CBC News, Clarenville.
Well, staying with the topic of rural health care, when a physician in Massachusetts heard people on Fogo Island were without a full-time doctor, he offered to help by working free of charge for 3 months. Dr. Paul Hart even offered to cover his own travel and living expenses and stay longer if needed. So why isn't he here? Here and Now's Martin Jones explains the holdup.
Fogo is in the middle of a healthcare crisis. The community is scrambling to find and keep doctors at the hospital. Over the past few months, doctors have been on and off the island, and that means emergency room closures and patient diversions to other hospitals. From a distance, Dr. Paul Hart saw the troubles on Fogo. He began his medical career here in this province. He was part of MUN Medical School's first graduating class back in 1973. He's now a doctor in Massachusetts, and he's offering to come to Fogo and serve at the hospital as a family physician for 3 months free of charge. Hospital administrators, the mayor, and the health minister all welcome the offer, but there's a snag. The province's College of Physicians and Surgeons says Hart doesn't meet several requirements to work in this province. He can't get a provincial license because he didn't complete a certification exam in this country. Without that, he can't get malpractice insurance, and because he works in a virtual clinic in the U.S., well, the college here doesn't recognize that as active practice. Active practice is a requirement even before an application can be submitted. Hart says he's tried to talk to college officials, but little dialogue has happened. Now, the college wouldn't comment specifically about Dr. Hart's application, but did say they are reviewing the role that virtual care could play in satisfying licensing requirements for future applications. Health Minister Tom Osborne calls Dr. Hart's offer generous. Osborne contacted the college for guidance. The health department has now paid for Hart's license application fee. So that application is now in, the fee has been paid, but still no formal communication from the college. Dr. Hart has been told now to wait for their decision. Dr. Hart says he's not trying to skip the application process. He knows the value of it. But he does add that in his 20 years of medical missionary experience, he has never had such a hard time trying to volunteer his services. Martin Jones, CBC News, Gander.
Well, the first doses of the new COVID vaccine are arriving in Newfoundland and Labrador today, but we still don't know how the province plans to use it. Here Now's Peter Cowan is tracking this story. He's in the newsroom. So, Peter, what do we know about how many doses are here?
Well, Carolyn, all the information we have is coming from the federal government. They say the first shipments are heading to this province. Now, the initial batch for all of Canada is about 800,000 doses. So on a per capita basis, which is how they've been distributing the vaccine until now, that would mean about 11,000 doses for Newfoundland and Labrador. So what makes this vaccine different is that it targets two strains of the virus. The original version, which is like the vaccines that we've been using until now, but it adds a vaccine specific to the Omicron strain, BA1, in the hopes that it'll provide better protection from getting COVID-19. Because right now it provides good protection from severe disease, but not very good protection from getting it.
Okay, so how quickly will people be able to get the shot of the new vaccine?
We don't know. We are expecting an update, the province tells me, in the coming days. Most other provinces have already released their plans, so we can learn a bit from them. Ontario, for example, is prioritizing the first doses of the vaccine to residents of long-term care homes and other vulnerable populations. But the federal government says more doses are going to be available every week, and that by the end of October, it says provinces will have enough doses for every adult who wants one to get one. Now, right now, this vaccine is only approved for adults, so children who are getting doses are going to receive the original COVID vaccine. The message from the federal government has been now that if it's been more than 6 months, you should get an additional shot. But right now, in Newfoundland and Labrador, if you're under 50, you don't qualify. But the province has generally followed federal advice, so we're going to have to wait and see for an update to find out if they're going to make fourth doses available for more people. The federal government did warn that having people to administer the doses is going to be an issue for some provinces. Here, Public Health has closed many of the vaccination sites that were used for those max vaccination for those first doses. And with nurse shortages, we don't know what the capacity is for being able to do more of that. We're waiting to see how the province will decide to roll out these latest round of shots. Carolyn?
Thanks so much, Peter. Well, Sexual Violence Awareness Week is coming up in the province. A proclamation was signed today at the Newfoundland and Labrador Sexual Assault Crisis and Prevention Centre. It marks the 23rd anniversary of the week. That's coming up from September 11th to the 17th. The proclamation notes the need for the criminal justice system to execute best practices in its response to survivors of sexual violence, and that survivors need to feel safe to report and seek justice.
The RNC actually have a place at our table for the round table and the Premier's round table on gender equity. So it's a bit of a long title there, but they're at that table. And we work closely with some units actually in the RNC as well as the RCMP. So conversations are ongoing. Anything I can do as a minister to support the people on the front lines who need the supports that they need, this work is consistently ongoing for sure.
Well, meanwhile, the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary has quietly introduced new rules about transporting members of the public. That follows allegations of sexual misconduct and assault that were piled against some RNC members last year. The new policy was brought in last September and updated again in June. It says officers can transport members of the public in their police vehicle only as part of a call for service. The force did not respond to requests for comment on this new policy. Well, in other news, there's an event coming up in Labrador this weekend for World Suicide Prevention Day. The Labrador West Mental Health Coalition will hold a picnic to remember those who have died by suicide on Saturday. Here Now's Daryl Din chatted with a spokesperson for the group.
Mental health awareness is so important to try to break that stigma. The stigma is tough, and it's a little bit tougher in a smaller community. So anytime you can get an opportunity to get the awareness out there, it's very important. So equally as important is to talk to people. So The picnic is an opportunity to come join us in memory, but also a chance for engagement for our community. So it's engagement, full engagement of our community is just so important when it comes to any suicide prevention and mental health awareness. As a community, we need to get better at it, start coming out and supporting it. When we talk suicide prevention, the coalition was formed in 2016 after a few suicides in our local community that hit the community hard, and we felt the need for it, and to, I guess, kind of escalate the importance of educating people on mental health and awareness.
A long-awaited day is coming soon. The Colonial Building Provincial Historic Site will finally open to the public next week. The site has been under extensive renovation since 2009. The $23.4 million renovation project was funded by the province and the federal government. The Colonial Building served as the former provincial legislature from 1850 to 1959. It will be open to the public on Tuesday and will feature guided tours and exhibits. Anyone interested in visiting the site are asked to book a time for a guided tour online. Reporters will get a first look inside the building. You'll get a sneak peek with that on Here and Now tomorrow. Well, the cost of gas is up slightly in the weekly fuel price change by just more than ½ cent a litre. Diesel, furnace oil, and stove oil prices are all down by about 3.25 cents a litre. Propane is up slightly by more than 1 cent a litre. As of midnight, the maximum cost of regular unleaded gas on the Avalon Peninsula is just over $1.67 a litre.
Taking a look there at the parkway from our roof cam. It was a rainy start to the day here in St. John's, but it picked up and it looks like the sun's trying to break through the clouds there now. We'll have all the details of what's going to happen tonight and tomorrow coming up after the break.
Well, time for a look at the weather. More frost.
Well, like
parts of the island.
frost advisory, and there's also a risk of frost for most people. So basically everybody on the eastern Avalon is probably going to be at risk of frost. But patchy frost, so not really frost. You know what, this is why we hire meteorologists. Anyways, hey buddy, let's go take a look at the map here now. So basically, as I was just trying to talk to Carolyn, but I walked away, this is our frost advisory for today. So basically you can see Green Bay, White Bay, Deer Lake, Humber Valley, Grand Falls, Windsor. But all along, see I got too many things in my hands, all along here and down on the Avalon Peninsula, you can expect a risk of frost tonight. Now, as I told you last night, if you were taking notes or paying attention, you would have realized that that's when the temperature drops between 4 and 2 degrees. That's why it's an advisory and not a warning. But we'll say goodbye to this map. And let's take a look at today's high temperatures. So, the highest, oh, excuse me, sorry about that. So 19 in Churchill Falls, 19 in Corner Brook, 19 in Stephenville. And as we were talking about last, I think it was yesterday, gosh, long time ago. So as we were talking about last night, the frost advisory was on the west coast, but then they bounced back and had 19-degree temperatures. So it could get a little bit chillier tonight, but it is going to warm up tomorrow. So tonight you can see everybody is in single digits. It's a little bit cooler than it was last night. I'm not sure about you folks at home, but over the summer I was sleeping with a fan on because my house gets hot and I don't have air conditioning. And I think last night was the first night I didn't use a fan. So that can tell you one thing. And I do run hot. So it must have been pretty chilly last night. And it's going to be another 8 degrees, almost 8 all over the island, 7 Grand Falls, Windsor, and 6 in St. Anthony. And if we take a look up, oopsie daisy, get these buttons yet. And then if you look up, it'll be a little bit warmer in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, but you could expect a little bit of rain in Labrador City and into Nain. Now let's take a quick look at the future tracker. As you can see, there is this system coming up there along through Labrador City, Churchill Falls area and up sort of towards the north coast. But it should be a pretty clear day Friday, which is tomorrow. Today's Thursday, Friday's best friend. And after Friday, it's Saturday, right, Carolyn? So that's an inside joke, and I apologize, only she gets it. So let's take a quick look here. We're on a roll here, Jeremy. So tomorrow, we're looking at basically a mix of sun and cloud for most of the Avalon Peninsula. Not too much in the terms of wind. The sun will probably break around in the afternoon hours, but you're looking 15, 15, 15 in Ferryland, and 18 Marystown, 16 in Clarenville, and 18 in Bonavista. Now I need my phone real quick because I couldn't remember what this was called. So for Ferryland, there's actually an advisory, not an advisory, it's called a Tropical Cyclone Information Statement. And that has to do with Hurricane Earl, which could cause some disruption. Could be waves, could be rain, they don't know. It's not going to happen until Friday night into Saturday morning, so you still have a couple times. We'll figure all this out and we can talk about it tomorrow. But now the rest, let's see what's on the go in the rest of the, man, oh man, there's 2 buttons here and I can't pick out which one is which. So 18 and sunny in Grand Falls, Windsor, 18 in Harbour Breton, and then 16 around Terra Nova, Gander, and Twillingate. A little bit of rain in Terra Nova, a few showers I should say, but not really much to worry about. And as we make our way to the west coast, it's basically been the same all week here for the west coast. 19 in Port aux Basques, 20 in Stephenville, 20 in Corner Brook, 19 in Gros Morne, and 20 in Baie Verte. Fun fact, my great Uncle Bill used to be the mayor of Baie Verte like 50, 60 years ago. So as we move up along into St. Anthony, Lancelot, Port aux Choix, 18, 18, 19. It's going to be a really nice day in Labrador tomorrow. And man, oh man, gosh, let me see. I've lost it all. I've lost it all. We have to go. Oh man, I was doing so well yesterday, and now I've blown it. I've blown it. So basically, what I was going to show you was that Labrador West is probably going to sit at about, I think it's 17 degrees if I remember correctly. It's going to be a little bit chillier up in Nain. I think you're about 15 and Makkovik about 18 degrees. But there is that hurricane that we're going to talk about. I think I have a slide of it, so we might as well, yeah. So we're going to talk about this more extensively leading into the long-range forecast, which will happen in a few moments from now. But basically, this system is going to make its way up the coast towards the Grand Banks, which could bring wind and rain and possibly some waves, but we're not too sure on that now. But I'll tell you all about that, and I'll figure out how to use the clicker when I come back later on the show. Carolyn? That's it.
signature to the official guest book, and the Queen was quickly off to other events. But not before a determined admirer, Rosie Meredith, slipped past security to take a picture of her, saying she wasn't bothered by police.
I don't care. At 80 years old, you don't mind much, do you?
It was a somber day as the world waited to hear news about the Queen. Her death came just a day after she cancelled a virtual meeting because doctors told her to rest. CBC's Abby Kuadathan looks at the hours leading up to her passing.
A rare statement from Buckingham Palace around midday that the Queen was not in full health. It reads, following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. In British Parliament, a session interrupted as MPs began to get word on their cell phones.
I wish to say something about the announcement which has just been made about Her Majesty. I know I speak on behalf of the entire House when I say that we send our best wishes to Her Majesty the Queen, and that she and the royal family are in our thoughts and prayers at this moment.
Prime Minister Liz Truss was there. She met with the Queen on Tuesday to be appointed as the new British leader. That ceremony usually takes place at Buckingham Palace, but due to the monarch's mobility issues, it was held at Balmoral for the first time in her long reign. Liz Truss tweeting, "The whole country will be deeply concerned by the news from Buckingham Palace this lunchtime. My thoughts and the thoughts of people across the United Kingdom are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this time." The Queen has been on the throne for more than 70 years, celebrating her jubilee this past summer. And for most of her subjects, she's the only British monarch they've ever known. Despite her age and despite her deteriorating health, the news out of Buckingham Palace has come as a shock.
She's a person who's been of considerable integrity and a great person for the country over so many years.
She's given her whole life to duty to her country.
I thought she was fantastic and, like I said, a role model for everybody.
She's phenomenal. She's the heart of the nation in so many ways, stalwart of the nation.
She is a mother and a grandmother too. Prince Charles and Prince William and all 4 of her children are now in Scotland. Prince Harry was meant to attend an event in London tonight, making the trip instead to Scotland. Abby Coabasin, CBC News, London.
Well, back in this province, she's the Queen's representative in Newfoundland and Labrador. The Lieutenant Governor was appointed in the name of the late Queen Elizabeth II. And not unlike the Queen, that position is nonpartisan and apolitical. At Government House in St. John's this evening, Judy Foote met with the media and had this to say.
Today is a sad day for those of us who knew Her Majesty, but I think for everyone. The passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II is heartbreaking, and she will be missed as she is being mourned by people throughout the world. Her Majesty committed her life, a life of service, and was always focused on duty. And for that, she will be remembered, as well as for many other things. She visited Canada 22 times, 3 of which were to our province. So I know she will be missed by many, and she will be missed by many in Newfoundland and Labrador. And when we met at Buckingham Palace, she recounted on one of her visits seeing the iceberg during that visit that dwarfed the Narrows of St. John's. She had a wonderful sense of humor, and when you were in conversation with her, you could tell that she hung on every word, that she really was engaging and enjoyed the conversation. I have extended condolences on behalf of the people of Newfoundland and Labrador to the royal family to let them know that, like them, we will miss her. I'm not sure shocked is the word, because I think we all knew, even though you didn't want to believe it, but at 96, she lived a full life, but we still mourn her passing. She was such an incredible woman. And to have lost that touch, that member of the royal family who gave so much in the service of others, I was saddened, and I'm still saddened. It was heartbreaking, but she has passed, and I guess life goes on, and now we have King Charles. But people, I think, just have this genuine love, particularly for Her Majesty. And I think you'll find that in any province. But I think here people recognize her life of service, her dedication to others, her sense of duty, which personified who she was. And people appreciate that. And with Her Majesty, I think it was, you looked at a woman who was caring, warm, great sense of humor, like many Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
Thousands of people had gathered at Kitty Vitty, and the Queen and her husband waded through the crowds. It was July 26th. Regatta Day was early that year. The Queen watched some of the races and chatted with some rowers.
When she died at Balmoral Castle today, Queen Elizabeth was 96 years old. She had reigned for more than 70 years. The CBC's Margaret Evans looks back at her extraordinary life.
A golden thread running through the generations. That's how one of Queen Elizabeth II's many prime ministers described her reign, the longest in British history. By the time of her death, she was without doubt one of the most recognizable figures on the world stage, and one of the most private, an enduring contradiction. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary was born on April 21, 1926, a princess, third in line to the throne, but not expected to accede to it.
I think one reason for Elizabeth's great resilience was she had, for a member of the royal family, a relatively normal and, crucially, very happy childhood.
Elizabeth's destiny changed along with that of her father, who became King George VI when his brother, Edward VIII, chose love over duty, abdicating the throne in 1936 to marry an American divorcee. Elizabeth's formative years were spent during the Second World War, just 13 when it began and 18 towards its end. It was also during those years that she set her cap at a young naval cadet named Philip, a member of the Greek royal family who also happened to be her third cousin.
Princess Elizabeth, as then she was, fell in love, there's no doubt about it, with a young man who looked like a Viking god. But she was dutiful enough to fall in love only within a selected gene pool.
They were married in 1947. Their first two children, Prince Charles and Princess Anne, were soon to follow. Andrew and Edward would come much later. When her father died in 1952, Elizabeth and Philip were on a royal tour in Kenya. She returned home immediately.
Elizabeth is led here in solemn procession to be anointed Elizabeth II.
A queen and the head of Commonwealth at just 25. Elizabeth placed great importance on the Commonwealth throughout her reign, insisting it bore no resemblance to the empires of the past.
The Queen's standard is lowered.
But in a blow to the Queen, Barbados removed her as head of state in 2021, citing a desire to break with its colonial past once and for all. Other Caribbean nations pledged to follow suit. She visited Canada more than 20 times, the most significant trip in 1982, when she and then Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau signed the act that effectively brought the Canadian Constitution home. Many years later, she would meet Trudeau's son Justin with a twinkle in her eye.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister of Canada, for making me feel so old.
The golden thread, though, wasn't always in evidence. In the early 1990s, the British public was unhappy over the monarchy's price tag. And 3 of the Queen's children divorced, none more spectacularly so than the Prince and Princess of Wales, Charles and Diana. When Diana was killed in a Paris car crash in 1997, the Queen's critics accused her of misjudging the nation's deep affection for Diana. They blamed the Queen for a delay in lowering the flag at Buckingham Palace and said she was too slow to return from Balmoral, where she'd remained with Diana's children.
That definitely shook the institution, there's no doubt about that. I was there the day that the Queen returned to the palace, and people were worried, what would the crowds be like?
And it did prompt a shift from the Queen, who came out to meet mourners at Buckingham Palace and made a live address to the nation.
First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being.
More sadness would follow for the Queen in 2002, the year of her Golden Jubilee. when she lost both her mother and sister within months of each other. Prince Philip left to fill the void.
After that, there was really no one left who could speak to her on terms of equality, except him. No one who could call her Lilibet.
With the marriage of the Queen's grandson, Prince William, to Kate Middleton in 2011, the image of a more stable royal family emerged. But the trials of family would return to haunt her. A favoured son, Prince Andrew, suspended from royal duties in the wake of sexual abuse allegations in 2019. And in 2020, her grandson, Prince Harry, and his wife Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, walked away from their royal roles in a family split that included unspecified allegations of racism within the royal family.
I don't think you go on and on and on, as Elizabeth did, by worrying about the headlines. I think she was always absolutely focused on her duty and her service.
And duty would soon call again, this time in the form of the global pandemic. In a public address, the Queen summoned Britain's wartime spirit.
We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
But in the spring of 2021, after 73 years of marriage, Elizabeth lost Prince Philip. He was 99, his death a reminder to the nation of the Queen's own mortality. She emerged from that period a little smaller, a little more fragile looking. But the golden thread was still there, wending its way towards her Platinum Jubilee in 2022, the first British monarch to celebrate 70 decades on the throne. The Mall leading to Buckingham Palace thronged once again with appreciative crowds, and the Queen let her playful side out for the occasion, taking tea with Paddington Bear.
Perhaps you would like a marmalade sandwich. I always keep one for emergencies.
So do I. I keep mine in here.
She even tapped out a tune with a teaspoon. But the Jubilee was also notable for what the Queen did not do, absenting herself from some of the key events. Earlier in the year, Prince Charles read the speech from the throne for his mother for the first time, a foreshadowing of the changing of the guard to come. She was, at the end of her years, more popular than ever. The sheer longevity of Elizabeth II's reign is partly what embedded her so deeply in the fabric of the nation. And with her passing, Britain's test will be to understand its sense of identity without her. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
Now to Saskatchewan, where the chief of the James Smith Cree Nation is calling for more support to help combat addiction and violence in Indigenous communities.
We ask that we have our own tribal policing. We ask for awareness in addictions. We ask for treatment centers.
Chief Wally Burns made his comments as part of his response to the deadly stabbings that took place on Sunday. 10 people were killed and 18 were wounded in the attacks in James Smith Cree Nation and the nearby village of Weldon. The main suspect, Miles Sanderson, evaded police for 3 days. He was arrested yesterday but died shortly after being taken into custody. It's believed he also killed his brother, Damian Sanderson, who was also a suspect. A former top advisor to former U.S. President Donald Trump has surrendered to authorities in New York. Steve Bannon is facing a total of 6 counts of money laundering, fraud, and conspiracy in the state. The charges were laid in connection with a nonprofit organization called We Build the Wall Incorporated. It solicited donations to supposedly build the border wall between the U.S. and Mexico that had been promised by Trump. However, prosecutors say Bannon covered his own expenses and funneled the money to 2 other people. Bannon had been facing similar charges at the federal level, but they were dropped when he received a presidential pardon from Trump.
Well, first of all, thanks for the people who wrote me on Twitter to say I'm doing a fine job, even though we all know that's not true. Anyways, here's our frost advisory. Cold snap! So basically, if you're in the blue area, you could get a little bit chilly tonight, drop down to 2 degrees. You're going to have to... there we go. Now, this is the Hurricane Earl that we've been tracking. We're going to talk more about it tomorrow. It is going to make its way towards Newfoundland, which will bring a lot of rain and wind to the Grand Banks. So basically what you're looking at, as you can see here, Saturday into Sunday, you'll see, you could notice something that we'll know a little bit more about this tomorrow. I was speaking to my friend Rob at the Environment Canada office in Gander, and he said that hopefully they'll be able to have more information for us tomorrow, but it is something to keep an eye on. But tomorrow is Friday, which means the weekend is coming. So let's take a quick look at, there we go, now I'm stuck on the other button. So here's what we're looking at for Saturday, and you can see, obviously, this is the wind that's probably going to come from Hurricane Earl there. But as you can see, 24 degrees in Labrador City, 24 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. So it's going to be a solid weekend for you in Labrador, and especially for down on the west coast and into the southwest coast as well. So the future tracker, and this is what, we don't know what the rain, but this is all going to be coming from Hurricane Earl, so it could bring some rain, and it's also going to bring some wind down through here. See, there we go. So basically that's Bonavista Vista Peninsula, Burin Peninsula, and parts of the Avalon as well. Excuse me. And so as you can see, that'll make its way along. So it will we'll know more about the amounts tomorrow. But let me just step out so you can take a quick look at this. So this is the long-range forecast for the island, the eastern part of the island. As you can see there, what do we got? Looking pretty good. Lots of double digits, lots of sun. There for central, 18 degrees on Friday, 22 on Sunday in western Newfoundland, so you're going to have a nice weekend there. And let's take a quick look up at what's going on in Labrador. Look at that Saturday. You're looking like it's shaping up to be a solid weekend there in eastern and western Labrador. So, yeah, enjoy it. Get out and enjoy it because it's September. There's frost advisory. You know what that means. Snow's coming. Now, before we wrap the show up, because we're running out of time, this was sent in to us. This was sent in, it's a picture taken in August, but these are some fishermen out trying their luck in leading tickles.
Oh, that's a great shot.
Now, Carolyn, I understand you have some information about tomorrow's show.
Yes, just a quick note before we finish up. Here and Now we'll have a delayed start tomorrow evening because of the Rugby World Cup. So we'll be starting at 6:30 Newfoundland time tomorrow night. Have a great night.
Yeah, and tune in. You don't want to miss it.
That's right.
It'll be great. That was so dumb.